Hello, hello, ghosties. Are you ready? I hope so. When I began imagining this channel, I had intentions of calling it Ghosted. And I began recording and editing and doing all things podcast around that title. Only to find out when I did a little bit more research, which hindsight, probably should have done that first, there are other podcasts with a similar name. So, after some deep soul searching, I've decided that Pocket Paranormal fits. So going forward, you will see Pocket Paranormal, but you'll always be my ghosties. Okay, phew. Now we've got that out of the way. Let's begin, shall we? Hey ghosties, are you ready for a story filled with history, the Underground Railroad, slaves, tragedy, ghosts, and more? Let's dive into the history of the Hanna House in Indianapolis, Indiana, and uncover what truly haunts its halls and grounds. The 24-room Hanna House is a stately brick mansion built off Madison Avenue in 1858 by then Indiana state legislator Alexander Hanna. Hanna was a civic leader who dabbled in a lot of interests, including farming and prospecting, serving as the Indianapolis South Side Community Sheriff, the postmaster, circuit court clerk, and is a member of the Indiana General Assembly. However, it is rumored that his most passionate project was a conductor on the Underground Railroad. As an Indiana-born native, Alexander Hanna would travel to California during the infamous gold rush as a prospector and earn enough money to become part owner of a ranch in California. After 5 years in this line of business, Hanna would sell off his various California ventures and move back to Indiana, finally settling in Indianapolis. Hanna's father, Samuel, was the president of the Indiana Central Railroad, and Hanna would then work with his father on his immediate return. Alexander Hanna would then go on to acquire 240 acres south of Indianapolis and begin construction on his dream home, a beautiful red brick mansion crafted in the Italianate design with Greek Revival influences, which was a very popular design aesthetic in the 1850s. The first toll road to be established in Marion County would cross part of Hanna's property, therefore affording him the ability to collect tolls from travelers along his section of the gravel road. In addition, Hanna was a progressive farmer who believed in scientific approaches to agriculture, leading to successful farming ventures into wheat, corn, oats, hay, and livestock, including cattle, sheep, and hogs. In 1872, Hanna would marry Elizabeth Jackson, and the couple would begin construction on a service building off the kitchen of the mansion. The new addition would be used as a smokehouse, wash house, milk cooling room, summer kitchen, and contain the servants' quarters. The couple hoped to fill the home with children's laughter, but local legend states that Elizabeth miscarried what would be their only child. There are no records associated with the child's death, but there is a small unmarked gravestone placed between Alexander and Elizabeth's gravestone in the Hanna family cemetery plot, which is usually indicative of an infant burial of that time. This tragic tale seems to have spun many tales of heartache and haunting of the property, namely in the upper bedrooms where the child's spirit is said to remain. All accounts state that the Hannas enjoyed a peaceful married life and would entertain and participate in civic events both on and off the estate grounds. According to legend, Alexander was a fervent abolitionist the years leading up to the Civil War, which would lead him, using his vast acreage, many of which were heavily wooded with no immediate neighbors, to begin his operations on the Underground Railroad. One of the most popular stories surrounding his involvement in the railroad and subsequent haunting of the estate was that Hanna was a main corridor for slaves traveling through Indiana towards Canada. It is said, on one rainy evening, a group of slaves were concealed in Hanna's cellar awaiting the right moment to begin their getaway, when one of these slaves accidentally tripped over an oil lamp and set the room ablaze. Given the cramped quarters, the room almost instantly was engulfed in smoke and flames, and the slaves, unable to flee, would die within minutes from a combination of smoke inhalation and severe burns. As the story continues, the slaves would then be hastily buried in that cellar's dirt floor by Hannah's own house slaves in an attempt to cover up the incident and keep this section of the Underground Railroad undiscovered. The tale is stated to be alleged events, as hiding slaves was not an activity that kept official records or were even talked about openly at that time. Therefore, there's no way to really verify this story. However, it has been said to have been passed down from one generation to the next. There would also later be a discovery of a partially collapsed tunnel whose trajectory would indicate associates with the Hannah House property and the area in which there are unverified accounts of the Underground Railroad, which of course would help in aiding to its validity. Alexander and Elizabeth would be laid to rest at Crown Hill Cemetery in 1985 and 1888, respectively. As the couple would pass without an heir, the property would sit dormant until 1899, when Roman Oehler, a German immigrant, purchased the home and 21 acres surrounding the property. Oehler was a Civil War veteran who had prospered in the jewelry business after the war. Oehler would change the porch of the home and add additional outbuildings to the property, which still stand today, before passing the home to his daughter, Romina Oehler, and her husband. Their family and children would occupy the home until 1962. During the 30 years that the home sat vacant and before the Oehlers would purchase it, a family by the name of O'Brien owned and operated an antiques business within the home. The antiques business would only be in business for about 10 years, but it is at this time that the claims of hauntings turned into local legend. And it is said you would experience cold spots, disembodied voices, foul smells, flying spoons, and that doors and wall hangings would have a mind of their own. By 1978, Hannah House was recognized as a historical landmark by the U.S. Department of Interior, but it wasn't until 1890 that the home was first used as a venue, which would actually be used as a haunted house themed fundraiser. So let's talk about the hauntings. A man by the name of David Eller, who was the caretaker of the property for approximately 6 years before the O'Briens would take possession, was the first to suspect the home to be haunted. One of his many claims was that he was in the mansion doing various upkeep chores when he heard a terrific crash of breaking glass in the basement, as if several mason jars had just broken into a million pieces. He rushed down with all his might and as fast as he could because he felt something was terribly wrong, but there was no one there. After surveying the area and finding absolutely no damage, Elder did take note of fruit jars that were being stored in that area, the same area where the slaves had been killed and buried all those years ago. Miss Elizabeth Hannah is said to be living on the second floor and is often seen in the second floor bedroom where she would give birth to their stillborn baby. Although that room has historically been locked up and used only for storage, it is said to be a center of the source of supernatural activity. Spoons have a tendency to fly across the rooms by themselves, and wall hangings will start to swing of their own volition. Mr. O'Brien claimed to see the attic door open by itself after having seen the handle deliberately turned by itself. Mr. O'Brien claimed to see the attic door open by itself after having seen the handle deliberately turned by itself. This is yet another room where a foul-smelling odor can be experienced. It is often said that the door to the room will freely and open after the door had been securely locked. It is said that when the attic door opens of its own accord, it is often followed by the presence of disembodied voices and other unexplainable manifestations. Despite the fact that the main staircase is covered with carpet, you will often hear the sound of heavy footsteps and the rustling of clothes. A painter who was hired to spruce up the home said he'd experienced doors swinging open before him, pictures sliding from their moorings as he walked by. Miss O'Brien brought in a tray for the painter, and then when the spoon shot across the room from the tray, the painter left and never returned. O'Brien's son would later volunteer to finish the job that the painter had refused to return to finish. On his first night, he had the feeling that he was being closely watched. So on the second night of painting, Miss O'Brien's son would bring his wife and their 2 daughters to keep him company, as well as to help with the painting. While 3 of them worked in one room, the youngest daughter played on the stairs. They heard the little girl clearly laughing and talking to someone and came out to investigate. Their daughter showed no fear and claimed to be talking to a grandfatherly type man, which apparently no one else in the family could see but her. The rest of the family watched the girl continue to carry on a conversation with this unseen person until the girl said that Dad was climbing back up the stairs. Scared out of their wits, the family promptly left the mansion. Miss O'Brien was said to be working in the first floor antique shop early one evening when she caught a glimpse of Alexander Hanna, dressed in a black suit, walking across the upstairs hallway. Thinking it was a customer who had wandered onto the second floor by mistake, she went up the stairs to redirect the man back downstairs, only to be met with empty air. The man she had saw completely vanished. Mr. O'Brien reported seeing a transparent apparition standing in the archway of the stairs. He was said to be wearing an old-fashioned black suit and had mutton chop whiskers. The figure also melted away before Mr. O'Brien could reach him. Loud groans were reported one night on the second floor. Fed up with the noise and the antics, Mr. O'Brien yelled down the hall, scolding the spirit to stop its belly aching and leave them in peace. TV crews that have been brought in to film the manor have experienced paranormal phenomena. In 1981, a film crew was doing a Halloween segment and the cameraman commented that it would be funny and unnerving if the chandelier would start swinging. As if on cue, the chandelier started swinging in a 6-inch arch. The crew would investigate the home thoroughly and found no reasonable cause as to why or how the chandelier did that. On the last day of filming, the cameraman stood in the dining room archway as the segment host stood in front of a prop coffin. Suddenly, the picture hanging on the wall above the coffin fell, causing a loud crash. After inspecting, they found the nail was still steadily in place on the wall and in an upward position. The string on the picture was not unbroken. They deduced that the only way the picture could have fallen was if something or someone had deliberately lifted it off the nail. Over the years, several visitors to the property claimed to have heard moaning and whispering in the cellar, presumably from the ghosts of the slaves. Investigators and past owners claim the slaves who lost their lives in that fire still haunt the home and the grounds. The mansion was given the nickname of the house that reeks of death because one day the bedrooms will smell like rotting flesh, but then the next day it'll smell like roses. Many past owners and guests have experienced doors swinging open for no reason, various cold drafts, disembodied voices throughout the home. The smell of fire and the sound of breaking glass are often observed within the basement of the mansion. A small boy is seen exclusively in the attic, and there is proof of him on video and photo. The mansion is open to the public, and prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, the mansion hosted haunted tours every Friday night in October. I cannot confirm if that is currently taking place. You can also view upcoming events happening at Hanna House, as well as a sign-up to spend your own time investigating the property. The Hanna House also hosts weddings, graduation parties, and corporate events. You can find them on Facebook by searching for Historic Hanna House. So I don't know. What do you think? Is Hanna House haunted? Possibly. It is filled with loads of history. For more information about the Hanna House, including the mansion's history, a tour inside, photos, evidence, and video of the hauntings caught on tape, visit historichannahhouse.com. It is important to note that paranormal experiences are often subjective, and there are usually perfectly reasonable explanation for what's really going on. But sometimes there isn't. Until next time, I'm your host, Brandy, and you've been listening to Pocket Paranormal.